thickening up overnight, particularly over parts of eastern England. The largely dry weather thanks to a chunky area of high pressure that's slowly moving in, pushing away these weather fronts to the north. They have been bringing some rain to Shetland during the day, but that's fizzling out. And as I say, most places are going to be dry. But the fog is thickening up once more this evening over parts of eastern England. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place. That fog likely to be dense and likely to stick around for much of Friday. Well, we keep clearing skies across northeast England and parts of Scotland. There will be a touch of frost, but generally a lot of cloud across the south, keeping the temperatures up here. Many places will be cloudy on Friday, and certainly early on there'll be a lot of thick fog across parts of eastern England, so that warning is still in place. Brighter skies across northern England, West Wales, some good spells of sunshine here and across Scotland, maybe the north coast of Northern Ireland seeing a bit of blue sky as well. And temperatures still generally a touch above average, but where that fog sticks around, we could really see temperatures struggling to get much above 3 or 4 Celsius, and that fog could well thicken up again on Friday evening and be a feature of the weather into the weekend. Clearer skies likely to persist across Scotland, which will allow, you can see there, hint of blue on the chart, a touch of frost to form here as we start Saturday morning. But again, much of central northern Scotland dry, fine and sunny. Could be some fog patches here. We're more likely to see them again across these eastern parts of England. Further south and west, some brightness, but many places just fairly cloudy but dry. Temperatures again, single figures for most, so a little bit down again and feeling rather chilly, I suspect, particularly where it stays misty and murky. High pressure sticks around through Sunday and into the early part of next week, keeping things largely dry, but also things turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into all the stories that have got you talking today. Now, you might remember Chris Whitty. He was telling us basically to prioritise the social events that we do and don't go to. Well, the impact there is once again being felt on the hospitality sector. They're saying that they are really not going to last much longer. So I wonder, is it time to reintroduce the COVID support measures into an industry which once again seems to be on its knees? And I'm intrigued, by the way. What are you doing about your plans in the run-up to Christmas? Are you changing any of them, or are you keeping on going exactly as you were? And a different story, the conditions that migrants have been held in on the Kent coast have been described as very poor, according to findings of investigations released today. Progress has been made, but how much more can be done? And an employment tribunal has ruled that asking someone in their 60s when they're going to retire is age discrimination. But shouldn't employers have the right to be able to do workforce planning? And if so, then surely that involves knowing the plans of their workforce, doesn't it? And when it comes to getting into the Christmas spirit, how festive are you? Are you right in there? Have you had your tree up for ages? Or are you the opposite side and doing as little as possible? I'll tell you why I ask, because I think I've found one of the most festive people ever. We'll have all that coming up and more, but first, the latest news headlines.
Your news at 6 o'clock. I'm Polly Middlehurst. Daily COVID cases in the UK have hit a record high for a second day. More than 88,300 were reported in the last 24 hours, 10,000 more than yesterday, and it's the highest daily total since the pandemic began. Meanwhile, the Chief Medical Officer, Professor Chris Whitty, is urging people to deprioritise certain social events ahead of Christmas to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. He's warning more records will be broken over the coming weeks as the Omicron variant surges in the UK.
Anybody who has something that really matters to them, concentrate on that thing and then build out from there, rather than just accepting every invitation and going to every bit of work in person. Clinical studies are showing that lots of people are getting reinfected with Omicron who previously had been vaccinated or had a combination of vaccines and natural infection. So it definitely is likely to bypass some of the ability to reduce infection.
Professor Chris Whitty there. Well, British tourists and businesses will be banned from entering France from Saturday. That's because of the rise in Omicron cases in the UK. The French government has announced that only French nationals, their families and British citizens living in the country will be allowed in. They'll have to isolate for 7 days on entry, but can leave isolation after 48 hours if they receive a negative PCR test. Travel industry groups have described the move as a hammer blow to their Christmas season.
Tours Travel had its best October sales ever, best sales ever for a month, and then it all came to a bit of a halt. Business has been great, but confidence in travel has taken a big knock. People want to travel, they've got the money to travel, they're desperate to get away, but they're just confused and frightened about what's going to happen when they're away.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, says he's listening to the concerns of businesses following the introduction of new COVID restrictions. He's held talks with the hospitality sector, which is calling for increased government support. Some are predicting a significant reduction in footfall this month as COVID cases rise. Business groups want an extension to the reduced VAT rate, which is due to end in March, and for business rates to be deferred. Her Majesty the Queen has cancelled her traditional pre-Christmas family lunch next week. It's understood the decision is a precautionary measure to avoid putting other festive events at risk. Downing Street also says the Prime Minister's audiences with the Queen are likely to become virtual. The economy and the Bank of England has raised interest rates for the first time in 3 years. The increase from 0.1% to 0.25% follows a surge in the cost of living. 8 out of 9 committee members voted in favour of the move. A man has accepted responsibility for the death of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa, but he has pleaded not guilty to her murder. Kochi Selamaj killed the 28-year-old as she walked through a South London park in September, going to meet a friend. The prosecution allege the man travelled to London from his home in Eastbourne to carry out a premeditated and predatory attack. He faces a further hearing in February. And as you've been hearing on GB News, the UK authorities are responding to several incidents involving small boats in the English Channel tonight. Border Force and lifeboats have intercepted several inflatables. So far today, more than 500 people have been brought to shore in Dover. Rescues are ongoing now. Residents in North Shropshire are heading to the polls to elect a new MP. The by-election was triggered by the resignation of the Conservative Owen Paterson. The polls are scheduled to shut by 10 p.m. tonight, and the result will be announced in the early hours of this morning. that's all from me. I'm going to be back in an hour's time. Sorry. For now, let's get back to Dewbs & Co.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. You've already started writing in, by the way. Michael, your email made me smile. You said, dear GB News, I sometimes wonder when I write in whether the team let out a sign, think, oh no, not him again. No, Michael, we would never feel that. And I can tell you, I read all of the emails that people send in. But keeping me company on this panel tonight, we have Ali Mirage, who's a columnist at The Article, Ben Habib, who's the CEO of First Property Group and also a former Brexit Party MEP, and Labour councillor and former parliamentary candidate Pimana Assad. Welcome to all of you. And as I said, I was just reading out the first email there from Michael. It's not just about us on this panel, it's also about you at home. I like to know what it is that is on your mind. You can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GB News. I was asking you, by the way, about whether or not you'll be changing some of your plans in the run-up to Christmas. Lots of you have been getting in touch already, basically saying that your Christmas isn't going to change. Janice has been in touch saying, my Christmas isn't changing. My mother's 93, triple vaccinated, so are we. My husband and myself, we'd planned to share Christmas with her, but it was snatched away from us last year, and they're not going to allow that to happen again, says Janice, who is, she says, a cancer survivor. Well, Janice, I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. But I'm intrigued, in the run-up to Christmas, of course, many of us get invited to various different parties, don't we? Whether it's work parties or catching up with old friends that you might not have seen. Will any of you be changing your plans in the run-up to Christmas to try and allow you to have the kind of Christmas with your family and loved ones that you want? Get in touch. That email again is gbviews@gbnews.uk. And you just heard in the headlines there that COVID cases have risen again today to over 88,000 in the day. And of course, as I mentioned, we'll all remember the words of Chris Whitty when he was basically telling us to prioritise the socialising that we're going to do. The reason this is important is because whilst it's not a lockdown per se, some are calling it essentially a lockdown by stealth because a lot of people are changing those plans in the run-up to Christmas. A lot of people now don't really feel safe or don't want to mix in groups because they want to protect that Christmas day, that Christmas experience with their loved ones. The people that are suffering from this, of course, though, are the hospitality trade. There's been so many examples, haven't there, of people calling for help and support because of the cancellations that they are experiencing. So I wonder, do you think it is time for the government to step in and provide some financial assistance to this sector? And if so, to this sector, why would they stop there? Ben Habib.
Well, it's interesting. You know, the economy is like a finely balanced ecosystem. And if the government steps up and prohibits or inhibits in any way, disturbs that ecosystem by directing certain behaviours, in this case, you know, minimising social interaction and indeed working from home, you're bound to have an adverse impact on the hospitality sector and other sectors. And if they're determined to do that, then absolutely they must step in and underwrite those sectors as well. You can't deprive people of the means of earning their living without giving them an alternative. But I just want to make one word of caution. You know, when you start messing around with an ecosystem the way the government has been for the last year and a half, even if you put in support structures, there are huge unintended consequences that no economist, no behavioural psychologist, no medic can forecast. And they come back to bite you. And we saw some of that earlier this year when we couldn't get haulage, we couldn't get adequate number of drivers for haulage. We're seeing it now with inflation. We saw Bank of England increasing interest rates actually as we go in to this semi-lockdown period. And so every time the government does, and one other major unintended consequence actually is that the waiting list on NHS now at an all-time high. There are 6 million people waiting for treatment versus 4 million 2 years ago. So all this interference comes at a vast cost. And I think the government reaction has been completely over the top. But having done it, they better come to the rescue of those who are most affected.
Mana.
Well, I think it's better to be cautious at this stage because we don't know the impact of this new variant. So far, people are saying that it only has a mild impact on individuals, but we don't know that the evidence isn't there yet because we haven't looked at the scientific information as much. But I think that in terms of supporting the hospitality industry, it's really important for the government to do that, especially if the government is saying, as Ben said, telling people to prioritise their social interactions. But I don't think the government had a choice. I mean, this is where I disagree with Ben. This is a pandemic. The government has a responsibility to citizens in the country to do things to make them safe. And if this is the initiative that they're putting forward, telling people, look at what you're doing. And I think the easiest thing for people to do, wear masks, do your lateral flow test, get vaccinated. Those are the things that could potentially try and halt this at the door.
Ali, someone called Tony's emailed in with a very good point saying, Chris Whitty, I didn't vote for Chris Whitty to be the PM. Did you? Well, the answer to that, of course, Tony, is no, we didn't. But what I did find, and the point that Tony, I suspect, is making here, I found it quite interesting, that it wasn't actually Boris Johnson that was coming out and saying, don't socialise, basically, or prioritise your socialisation. He kind of left that to the scientists, for want of a better word. And I thought that was quite telling because this has all become very politicised now, hasn't it? And Boris Johnson will probably feel that he can't do right for doing wrong. So if he kind of passes this over to the scientists and says, well, it was the science that kind of said you shouldn't mingle, then he will kind of dodge the attacks that will come from, say, hospitality and industry when they are pushing and saying, well, you've locked us down, you should be giving us the support. What's your thought?
Well, I think the first thing to say, Michelle, is that I took Chris Whitty's diktat to heart in terms of prioritising my interactions, which is why I'm on your show. I would never miss it.
You prioritise being with us. I like that.
Absolutely. But you're right to point out the difficulty that Boris Johnson finds himself in. Now, back in July when Boris decided to open up, he was coming under a lot of criticism from certain elements of the scientific community, and he still pressed ahead with opening up, which turned out to be exactly the right thing to do. The problem he's now got, Michelle, as you saw on Tuesday night with almost 100 of his own backbenchers voting against him, is that certain parts of his party, and it wasn't just the usual suspects, it was much broader, that rebellion, and part of it was down to his handling of various other things. I don't think it's all down to Plan B and COVID restrictions and vaccination passports, but certainly he's got to protect his flank within the Conservative Party, and then he's got the scientists on the other side of the equation whose sole metric in life is to prevent hospitalizations and deaths. The job of a Prime Minister is to lead. He has to look at this in the round and decide on the balance what he wants to do, because Ben's right, there are other consequences from imposing restrictions, be it Plan B, we're all working at home at the moment, but even further, if there was another lockdown to be imposed, the impacts on mental and physical health, the impacts on waiting lists, the impacts on the economy. So the job of government and the Prime Minister, it's not an easy one. It's a very, very tough line to tread, but he has to show leadership. And I think at the moment, I was supportive of Plan B. I think it's reasonably sensible. But you're right. Hospitality industry is crying out for help. You name any celebrity chef, Tom Kerridge, Michelle Roux Jr., everyone's lining up to say that the government needs to do more to support the hospitality industry. You can see people cancelling their Christmas parties and stuff. So Rishi Sunak needs to turn up. He's coming back from California. He needs to be seen. He needs to be actually making some suggestions about what he's going to do in business rates and VAT, etc. I think the government's got it just about right. But I honestly think any further lockdowns is not merited, and we need to learn to live with this.
Yeah, and I think we were just talking there about mental health. One of the things that I've been kind of pondering and reflecting on, slash what I mean is my mum's rung me up and had a go at me, and I've reflected on what my mum said. That's what I mean there. But I kind of think I've reflected on the situation, and there are some really strong sentiments and emotions, myself included. I've got very strong opinions on what we should and what we shouldn't be doing. I'm very, very, very anxious the direction of travel that I feel that we're going in, the way that liberties are just stripped off people, and it's now just become almost accepted. I really cannot abide, as regular viewers will know, any notion or concept of mandatory vaccination. It really, within me, it sparks a feeling and a sentiment, because I think it's so wrong, and I find it makes me almost worried about the direction of travel, that these things are even considered. However, I do feel, and I put myself in this bracket, that we all need to kind of take time to almost kind of listen to and understand the other perspective. I mean, I don't think I will ever understand the perspective or sentiment of people wanting mandatory vaccinations. I think that for me is a line in the sand. But nonetheless, I think that as a collective, people just want to be healthy and well. They want to be safe. They want to be around for as long as possible, as healthy as possible for their children. And when I look at things like social media, it's getting so nasty. And you mentioned mental health. It's getting so nasty out there, isn't it? And it's kind of like, how do we've got this situation that none of us want, let's face it, no one wants this. How do we kind of try not to damage ourselves further than is needed? Am I making any sense?
Well, you are. I mean, the divisiveness in society has been around ever since 2016.
It has.
You know, ever since we voted for Brexit, we've had this massive division in society, and now we've got sort of the zero COVID tolerance lot versus those who want a more libertarian approach to life. But it's a very important point you make, Michelle, because it's about the long arm of the state. And what we've seen is the nanny state that Tony Blair introduced actually being taken to a full wet nurse status by Boris Johnson. This is the largest government spending we've ever seen as a country. This is the largest state intervention we've ever seen as a country. We now have taxes at a higher level than we've ever had in the past. We have more regulations, even though we've left the EU. We are a more highly regulated society now than we ever have been before. And at last, we've now got these COVID passports coming in. I say at last because Tony Blair wanted to introduce ID cards, and that was fought off. But actually, Boris Johnson, a Conservative who ought to be libertarian at heart, has succeeded in doing something that actually the Labour Party couldn't do. So the direction of travel is very worrying. We are heading into what I would regard as a kind of collective groupthink socialist society. And if you need any symptom of that, more than any other, it's the fact that Labour got this legislation through day before yesterday. It wasn't really the Tory party pulling together against Labour. It was Labour getting Boris Johnson through it. We don't have a Conservative Party anymore. We don't have any people standing up for the libertarian view, with the exception of the 100 Tory MPs who voted against that legislation.
Well, yeah, the opposition.
They are the opposition.
Yeah, Pamela, the opposition to the Tories seems to be coming from within the Tories.
Yeah, I know. One of the
you must love it as Labour. You must be watching the Tories fighting.
Well, I think it shows that the Prime Minister has lost his power, and that maybe it's time for him to go, and that he does not hold that position within the Conservative Party that he used to. And I think that's quite clear, the fact that 100 Tory MPs voted against him in Parliament on these measures.
I think it's one thing voting against a measure. It's another thing extrapolating that and saying, actually, that would then translate into a vote of no confidence to get him out.
But I do think that he does. I mean, there's so many instances right now where the country is looking at Boris Johnson and thinking, this isn't a joke anymore. We need a leader in these current times. It's a time of crisis. And to come back to your point, why is the government putting in these measures? Because it's a pandemic. We don't have pandemics all the time. So it's a time of national crisis, and we need to put these measures in place. I mean, the Labour Party did say, for example, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, was calling for masks to be mandatory on public transport, but the government was refusing to do that. If we had those measures in place, maybe we wouldn't be at this position that we are in right now. And I don't want to see us go into a lockdown. I don't think anybody has the appetite for that. We're going to have to live with this virus for the foreseeable future. I think it's quite clear that this isn't the last variant that we'll be seeing. There probably will be another variant somewhere else that will come about, and we just need to protect ourselves. That's why I think the booster program, vaccination, is really important. I don't agree with mandatory vaccination. I think that the World Health Organization was very clear that that is infringing on people's human rights, and so that shouldn't happen.
But things like, I mean, I can't believe that anyone would need a World Health Organization to tell them. I mean, why do you need a World Health Organization to tell you that making people be injected with something is it's stupid. It's like it beggars belief that you would need an institution to tell you how wrong that is.
Yeah, but there are other measures that we could put in place to make sure that we don't go into a lockdown. But I think the government needs to step up. And the question I ask is, where is Rishi Sunak? I mean, why is he out of the country? We're in a national
Well,
crisis.
he's imminently en route back. But I find that this point about where is the opposition at the moment politically, Ali, you know, the fact that the opposition is pretty much within the Tory party as opposed to externally at the moment is an interesting place to be.
It is, and I think that if you look at an Ipsos Mori poll that came out today, you'll find that voters on almost every count feel that the government's not performing to the level it should be, apart from one area, which was the rapid rollout of the vaccination programme, which has been an unmitigated success. Really, that was down to Nadeem Zahawi, who did that extremely well and obviously got promoted on the back of it to Education Secretary. So I think you're right. There is a lot of disquiet amongst ranks within the Tory party. That is not just about COVID and potential mandatory vaccination, which I thought we'd never hear the words uttered from the Prime Minister's mouth, but we did the other day, and it has been brought in Austria and also being considered in parts of Germany. So I think it's a very, very difficult time for the Prime Minister. He needs to tread a very fine line, and his days may be numbered. We'll find out later tonight what the by-election result is. That won't help.
Yeah, indeed. Nellie's been in touch, saying the government are damned if they do and damned if they don't. I don't know if you're a man or a woman, you say Nellie, but Nellie is saying that actually what we need is common sense in relation to COVID and many other things, and that this government bashing should stop. Jason says, if Plan B is the answer, why are cases rising? These restrictions don't work, and there's evidence from numerous countries that they don't. And I have to say there, Jason, there are many countries that have vaccine passports and things like that that have absolutely seen their cases continue to rise. I can't dispute you on that particular point. Do keep your contact coming in. Paul, you started sending me an email. It was a very interesting email, but you wrote your whole thing in the subject, so I can't actually see the end of your point. So do try again, but put your email in the actual email so that I can read it. Anyway, going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be discussing the report that's out that claims that many migrants that cross the Channel are being held in, I quote, very poor conditions. We'll be back in just a few minutes, but first, here's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. Dry and cloudy for most today, and the next few days we'll see more of the same. We are going to see some thick fog patches, though, thickening up overnight, particularly over parts of eastern England. The largely dry weather, thanks to a chunky area of high pressure that's slowly moving in, pushing away these weather fronts to the north. They have been bringing some rain to Shetland during the day, but that's fizzling out. And as I say, most places are going to be dry. But the fog is thickening up once more this evening over parts of eastern England. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place. That fog likely to be dense and likely to stick around for much of Friday. Well, we keep clearing skies across northeast England and parts of Scotland. There will be a touch of frost, but generally a lot of cloud across the south, keeping the temperatures up here. Many places will be cloudy on Friday, and certainly early on there'll be a lot of thick fog across parts of eastern England, so that warning is still in place. Brighter skies across northern England, West Wales, some good spells of sunshine here and across Scotland, maybe the north coast of Northern Ireland seeing a bit of blue sky as well. And temperatures still generally a touch above average, but where that fog sticks around, we could really see temperatures struggling to get much above 3 or 4 Celsius, and that fog could well thicken up again on Friday evening and be a feature of the weather into the weekend. Clearer skies likely to persist across Scotland, which will allow, you can see there, hint of blue on the chart, a touch of frost to form here as we start Saturday morning. But again, much of central northern Scotland dry, fine and sunny. Could be some fog patches here. We're more likely to see them again across these eastern parts of England. Further south and west, some brightness, but many places just fairly cloudy but dry. Temperatures again, single figures for most, so a little bit down again and feeling rather chilly, I suspect, particularly where it stays misty and murky. High pressure sticks around through Sunday and into the early part of next week, keeping things largely dry, but also things turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
On Brazier at 8, a leading American commentator says it's become impolite to ask about the state of Joe Biden's mental faculties. Is there a conspiracy of silence among mainstream media? If you're a parent, do you read to your children? And if you do, what books, stories you enjoyed as a nipper? That's wrong, apparently. We'll share the woke titles. that should now be bedtime reading, and the return of the Nativity, why three wise men, Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus, will not be obeying social distancing this Christmas. That's Brazier from 8.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. I was just having a whinge there in the break. I've got to tell you about the NHS. I've just been trying to get my baby appointment, an appointment actually on the NHS, and I can't because obviously they're prioritising these boosters appointments, and I was just moaning about it to my panel. If you caught the end of that conversation there, that's what it was. Anyway, you guys have been getting in touch in your droves again. Oh, you've so many. I've just flagged some emails that I want to read out to you. And in the meantime, so many more emails have come in. Here we go. So Matt has said, I was going to Old Trafford at the weekend, but decided not to so that I can be sure to be OK for Christmas when I want to go to Iceland. But he says the game has been postponed now anyway. Good. Anyway, not good that the game has been postponed, but good that actually the choice that you made meant that you didn't have to miss out on anything because it wasn't going ahead anyway. Kevin has been in touch to say, you are right to draw a line in the sand at mandatory vaccination. Michelle, perspective has gone completely, it feels. I've got to agree with you there. Clive has said, Michelle, why do you continue to load your panels with anti-Boris people, including yourself? See, Clive, I'll tell you, the challenge that we've got at the moment is I would love nothing more than to be able to sit here and support the leader of this country. But, Clive, you have to admit, even if you are kind of, you know, an out-and-out one of the biggest Tories in the land, you have to admit that right now Boris Johnson is making some own goals. And with that in mind, you know, I'm not really a fan of just blindly supporting a leader. Even when they're kind of making own goals, I think it's only right and fair and proper to pull out those own goals. And I think to turn a blind eye to that isn't a great thing to do. But I know that a lot of people disagree with me and continue their support of Boris Johnson. I'm intrigued if you're one of those people, Clive. So say you, Clive, you've told me to stop this Boris bashing. Is there anything that Boris would do that would make you kind of think, I'm not sure about this? But you've got to give him credit, as one of my other viewers mentioned in earlier on. This is a difficult job, and you're damned if you do in this situation, and you're damned if you don't. Wayne says the only reason that Labour continuously back Boris is they know all these measures will destroy the economy, then Boris will get blamed and Starmer will get into power. Job done, says Wayne. There you go. Let me know your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. Now, moving on to a different story, a report has found that migrants who are crossing the Channel are still being held in, I quote, very poor conditions. An inspection in September 2020 criticised the facilities in Kent. And although the Home Office promised to take rapid action at the time and make significant improvements, the findings that are out today said that many migrants are still experiencing inadequate treatment and conditions. It pointed to things like a lack of support for women who said that they'd been sexually assaulted, and also reported that a child had been held in inadequate provisions for 90 hours. Pimana, I'm going to turn to you first. I hope you don't mind me saying, but your family actually left Afghanistan. You were in a camp, a refugee camp as well, as a child. What is your thoughts on this?
I mean, first of all, to say that report came out in 2020 and the fact that the government hasn't taken any action.
No, that's not true, because improvements have been made and the report acknowledged that.
But not to the extent that they should have been. I mean, I read the report too, and it stated that there were lone children that were put in together with other adults in the same place. And that, to me, is a safeguarding issue. I mean, that screams lots of other things to me as a local councillor, and I think that's not okay. You know, one of the things that I would say on this is that if we're going to be treating people like this, then we should just be sending them back to other places, or actually put in provisions to support them in a proper manner. My family were given the support that they deserved when they came here. I came here when I was 3, and the support that we got at that time was completely different to the support that we have, that immigrants, refugees have now. And I think that's because of a shift in what this government has been putting towards refugees specifically. It is a hostile environment that refugees come to in this country. I have to say that, because
so let me, before I bring in Ali and Ben, who I'm keen to hear from as well, you know, I do have to represent, my inbox is flying in, so you say it's a hostile environment. Shouldn't it be as the situation where you are doing everything that you can to deter people from illegally and unsafely crossing a channel?
There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. I don't agree with that. But
well, there is.
You continue, no, but I disagree with that. If you continue to put up to stop people from coming here in those terms, in terms of safe, there's no safe routes. That's the issue. There are no safe routes. The safe routes are too expensive, they're too difficult to process, and refugees do not have access to these safe routes from other countries, specifically countries that they're trying to flee. I can give you an example from Afghanistan. Okay, yes, the Taliban have taken over, but the issue is that those people have to travel to a third country to even put in any sort of application to try and come to the UK. Getting a visa to the UK is impossible for people like that. We've seen what's happened with the Afghan resettlement scheme. It's not even active. We've seen the reports now in terms of what the government's doing with those who have actually served with the British Armed Forces, and reducing the criteria and making it harder. So I do think there is a hostile environment, and I think that's because they want to completely ban immigration to this country, completely stop people from coming here. But I think we need to take into consideration that most of these people are fleeing because of war and persecution, and they have no other choice.
I want to bring in Ben. Yeah, I was going to say I want to bring in Ben, because I don't agree with the sentiment that people are desperately trying to ban people coming to this country. I don't agree with that sentiment. I think people want to control it.
I think the fact we're having this debate actually speaks to what a wonderful country we are. And this report is really not about long-term care of refugees or immigrants, illegal immigrants, whatever, coming to this country. This report is about the transitionary relief they get when they initially arrive here. It's really at the first point of contact that we're failing, according to this report. And part of the reason for that is because we've seen a massive surge of immigrants coming across the Channel to the UK this year, because all other routes have been shut down. As you say, air travel is, you didn't say air travel, but you said other routes have been shut down. And, air travel is the most obvious way to get into the United Kingdom. And most illegal immigrants got to the UK, or typically get to the UK by coming in legally and then not leaving. But so what we've got is people now coming across the Channel, and it's this transitionary 3 or 4 days that they have when they're first processed that's problematic. But actually, I think we treat people brilliantly. It's costing us $1 billion a year to look after these people that come across the Channel. And the reason they're coming across the Channel is because actually the United Kingdom is a darn sight better than France. Otherwise they'd stay in France. The conditions in France and Calais are horrific. We're a first-class country. I'm very proud to be British when I read a report like that, because we're trying to better ourselves. The French wouldn't even bother with this. What we need to do, just to finish off on the totality of the debate, what we need to do is be much more robust with France and make sure that they treat the immigrants that they have in their country better, and that those immigrants make proper asylum applications to the United Kingdom, if that's where they want to come, before they're allowed illegally, aided and abetted by French authorities, to get into dinghies and make that perilous journey.
Ali, I want your thoughts.
Well, I think the French would argue that we are attractive and we're a soft touch to a lot of people trying to come across the Channel. That's the argument they would make. And despite the fact that we've supposedly given the French 54 million for drone patrols across their borders, it's still not working. And you've got dinghies coming across. 27 people died the other day. I mean, just to pick up on something that Pimana said about this anti-immigration sentiment, I don't think that's right at all. And I do think that there's a difference between people who are genuinely fleeing persecution and in fear of their lives, and economic migrants. We have always in this country had a great tradition of supporting people genuinely fleeing persecution, going back to the days of Idi Amin in the 1970s when he kicked out the Ugandan Asians. But I've always found it a bit odd that a lot of these boats are full of young men. Where are their families? Are they genuinely fleeing persecution? Would you not take your wife and children with you? I always found that slightly odd. So I do think we need to be careful of abuse of the system. People who arrive should be treated humanely. But the bigger issue is we don't want people crossing the Channel in dinghies, potentially to die in the first place. The system has to be reformed. We have to work with the French. Under the Dublin Convention, we could return these people back to the first country which they landed in. Now we've left the EU, we can't do that anymore. So we do have to work with the French. The French are not happy with us anyway for a multitude of reasons. Macron's got his own re-election coming up in April. He has to appear tough to his domestic audience. Boris has to appear tough to his audience here. So there are all sorts of issues. But the key thing is we shouldn't have these people crossing the Channel in the first place.
There's so much to say back to this, but I think the bottom line is this. It's not about being proud to be British or not being proud. I think everyone can be proud of our country. And we are, as a people, very welcoming. But this is about the issue to do with government policy. And we need to look at that separately.
No, it's not. This isn't about government policy. This is about the point that Ben made, Pimana, which is about.
I think it is.
You have. Well, it's not.
If you let me finish my point, then I can.
But I listened intently to yours, and what I'm saying is today, what we're discussing the findings of the report that showed that the initial contact that these people have once they get to the Kent coast, we're looking at whether or not that is fit for purpose. That's the discussion that we're having. I think we're all in agreement that we need to look at safe routes and safe passage and all the rest of it, and that's absolutely no no one would push back on that, of course. We're talking about when people get to Kent, what is their experience? And the challenge that you've got, and I mean, I have the letters here that people are writing about this. You have, for example, on one evening, 4 coaches of people arrived from Dover in the middle of the night. Now, there's only going to be so much that can happen when you've got unprecedented numbers of people arriving in the middle of the night, when you're already stretched, you've got COVID, that means that people are off and, you know, facilities are not up and running. You've got these people that are arriving into environments that are not built for this purpose at all. I mean, you know, people are doing their best, Pamana. You would accept that?
No, I understand that, but I think that we should be doing better. That's my point is. I do think that this links into national government policy on how we treat refugees and immigrants in general, and I think this is being reflected in what has happened in Kent and what is happening in Kent. The bottom line is this. If we don't allow refugees to claim asylum from the countries that they're trying to come from, then this is not going to go away. They will continue to get on boats. And you make the point that these are all men. They're not all men. There have been children. There have been women.
They're predominantly men, Pamana.
But the best way to deal with this, Pamana, isn't it?
Is to allow people to claim asylum from the country that they're trying to flee, so that their process can be so their application can be processed properly. Right?
We've got agreement on that.
But what we have to understand, what we have to accept, that there are people in this country that have been on, their applications are still being processed by the Home Office. They've been years and years waiting to have their cases heard. Okay, and these people sometimes don't even have access to any type of support. I know because I'm a local councillor, these people come to the council to try and get help. Sometimes they're homeless, they're pregnant people in this. There's loads of complex issues about why these people can't get support because of their immigration status.
But just one thing, you know the lady who sadly died the other day, who was coming across in the dinghy? Yeah. I mean, we don't know much about her, but it seemed that she had a perfectly nice life. At least from the pictures that we saw, she recently got married and she was trying to come to meet her husband. Now, was she a genuine asylum seeker or an economic migrant?
But here's the thing. Why wasn't her case looked at in terms of her reuniting with her British husband? Mm-hmm. That should be easy for the Home Office to resolve, right? Are we stopping people from reuniting with their family members? Many of these people in France, you know, I've met them, that they're trying to reunite with their families. That's why many of them are getting on these dinghies, because they don't have any other route.
So these men are trying to reunite?
Some of them are. I'm not saying all, but I'm saying some of them. The challenge that you've got there, Pamana,
and people, I can see the emails flying in now, what people are saying to this is, this whole kind of, I'm trying to reconnect with my family and all of these processes taking so long. A lot of these people, not all, a lot of these people discard their identity documents when they're getting onto these dinghies. Now, if you are genuinely trying to reconnect with your family, you would do everything in your power and to make it possible and expedite the process to get reconnected with people. You wouldn't be, I find it very peculiar that if that's your position, you'd be then making it harder for yourself to be identified. Anyway, you know what? We've got to move on. We could continue this conversation, and I can tell you now, you know, your contact is flying in. It really is flying in. I think on this panel, we've got a consensus that we need to have safe routes for asylum. I think where we're kind of disagreeing is what that looks like when, you know, that route's not there and people are taking alternate measures. I think we're not going to solve this issue tonight on this panel, that is for sure. Your comments have been flying in. You can continue to send them, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be saying, if you're an employer and you want to do workforce planning, I don't know, you want to look at how do you build and expand your team? Do you need to recruit? Don't you need to recruit? Do you think you should be able to ask about the plans of your workforce? According to a tribunal, no, you can't ask, for example, a 60-year-old if and when they want to retire, in the same way that many people would know that you can't ask, say, a 30-year-old if she wants to have a baby, for example. Is that fair on the employer? Should it be fair on the employer? We'll have a break and we'll see you in just a few minutes to discuss that.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, will Omicron derail another season of the Premier League? Former England footballer and vaccine passport opponent Matt Letizia shares his fears. Plus, GB News star Mark Dolan and political firebrand Anne Widdecombe sound off on the topics that matter to you. And I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel. Making her debut, the Loose Women star and broadcaster Carol McGiffin, the conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, and the author and journalist Amy Nicol. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, I can tell you there's the debate rumbling on in this studio during the break, and the same messages coming through from the emails that I'm getting from you as well was when Pamana was saying that there's no such thing as illegal immigration. Lots of disagreement on that, I can tell you. I've had lots of people saying, well, if that's the case, then no such thing as illegal immigration. Can I just head off to places like Australia and rock up there? Will they just accept me? And when I try and work, will I be able to, etc.? Pamana, you've just been, sticking up for your corner there in the break as well. So as I said, a debate and disagreement that will rumble on. Let's move to a different topic if we can. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt discriminated against in your workplace due to your age? Do people asking you about things like your retirement plans make you feel uncomfortable? If so, this next story might be good news then for you, because an employment tribunal has ruled that asking someone on when they plan on retirement is a form of age discrimination. This comes after a civil servant in his 60s won a claim against his former employer, the Ministry of Defence, of unfavourable treatment. The judge ruled that a 30-year-old wouldn't be asked about when they plan to stop work because they wouldn't yet be able to take their pension. So basically, they were saying it was unfair. What do you reckon to that? Is it really invasive and discriminatory simply for an employer to ask about your plans? Ali?
Well, I think a good employer should know about all the plans of their various employees. I mean, an employee might have particular family concerns at a certain period of time in their life where they need to focus on that more than work, or they might be wanting to take a sabbatical, or they might be wanting to start a family. You can't ask that openly, clearly, because that would be discriminatory, but it's good for employees to generally be aware.
Able to ask? Well, so if you can't ask, how do you find it out then?
Well, I think if you're looking at a situation where we've got an ageing population now, Michelle, and we're probably going to be working well into our 60s, I think it is a little bit unfair to say to someone blatantly, when are you going to retire? However, we do know that there, particularly within the city, you find that when you get to a certain age in your mid-50s, people are tapping you on the shoulders in certain employers, trying to make way for the pipeline of younger talent to come through because they're regarded as bed blockers. I mean, you could even say the same thing in Parliament with so many older MPs, right? There are lots of young thrusting candidates who are just wishing and waiting for people to retire at the next election. Now, no one's forcing anyone to do that, but certainly you've got to be mindful of the fact that you've got to bring on new people, but also the fact that people, if they're going to be living longer, have to fend for for themselves and their families, and therefore we're going to have people working and doing multiple careers during the course of their lifetime. So I think there's a balance to be struck. I don't think you should blatantly come out with this in an undignified manner and force people, but you also have to recognise the fact that we do have to bring on talent, and younger people also need a chance to move up the career ladder.
Ben Habib, you've got employees.
I think you've got to be allowed to ask the question. I think all this shying away from engaging in a workplace for fear of upsetting someone has just gone far too far. I'm 56. I've got 4 years before someone might be accusing me of being a bed blocker. But, you know, if someone says to me, Ben, when are you intending to retire? I'm CEO of my company. It's important the company knows when it is I intend to retire. They need a replacement. The company must go on. You know, it's incumbent on a company.
But wouldn't you sit there and think, hang about, you're only asking me that so you can line up a replacement?
Yeah, and my answer would be, I'm never going to retire. What are you going to do about it?
But wouldn't you... I was just about to say, but if you're a younger person, you're not going to be asked about retiring, are you? So that's just silly.
I'm never going to retire, by the way.
Aren't you? Yeah. Well, that's good for you. But what about, so Pamana, I always found it fascinating, for example, that if I was going to interview you, I don't know how old you are, but I'm not allowed to say to you, so what's your thoughts in terms of pregnancy, family, what's your plans? As an employee, you're not allowed to do that in the same way you couldn't then ask a 60-year-old, what's your thoughts, when are you going to retire? How could an employer then make sensible decisions about workforce planning if they can't actually ask their employees about their plans?
Well, I think especially when it comes to retirement, if you're giving people information about pension or, trying to find out that kind of information, you do blanket for all employees and get that information back, then it wouldn't be discriminatory. But if you're
not going to ask a 20-year-old about their entire
I mean, if you want to give them
them
information about, pensions and various other things, then fine. But if you're actually pinpointing someone who is 60 and saying, when are you going to retire, I do think that is discriminatory.
But isn't it just sensible, though? Because you're not going to pinpoint that. I'm not going to come to you and pinpoint you and go, Pimana, when are you going to retire? Because you're going to go, well, I'm only however old you are. You are going to. If you're going to work out your workforce
But how
planning,
does anybody know when someone is going to retire? As
when
Ali
they get
said,
old.
Well, as Ali said and Ben said too, that we're working well into over past our retirement ages anyway, and some people have to do that because their livelihoods depend on it. So I don't think it's a black and white question.
But
really.
it's not discriminatory just to
But
make the inquiry.
I do think it is, because sometimes, as women and as young people, we do get asked questions or...
So give me a question that you would regard as discriminatory for a young person.
Well, our experience, they expect us to have 50 years of experience for a junior entry-level job, for example.
Yeah.
No, they
most
don't.
companies do.
But that's
Most companies do.
in your
Hang on.
Yeah, but I'm saying most companies
No,
do.
Pimana, I need to pull you up on this. You're telling me that an employer that is interviewing you, asking you about your experience, that is discriminatory?
No, I'm just saying that they expect us to have X, Y, and Z amount of years of experience just for an entry-level job. I do think that is a bit age discriminatory, because how am I supposed to have X, Y, years of experience when I've only just graduated, for example?
Any form of exercising any form of judgment becomes discriminatory. We need to get people... It's got to be meritocratic. You've got to get people...
I think on this instance, if we're looking at this case in particular, I think the individual that was asked because of his age. And because maybe they were trying to line up a replacement.
Well, I think we've got to be careful that we're not creating workforces that are desperate to see discrimination anywhere, because as an employer, you want to be able to grow a business and you want to be able to do that as best as you possibly can. And it's, I would imagine, very tricky if all day, every day, you're sitting there thinking, oh, can I ask this question? Can't I ask this question? Anyway, I've literally got just a couple of minutes left, so I want to show you something that I found on GBNews, I have to say. Yesterday, I was paying attention. I definitely watch GBNews, you see, in my spare time. Our reporter, Balvinda Sidhu, she was out and about there in North Shropshire in advance of the by-election. And look at this that I saw creeping in on the side of the screen. Pay attention. Look at that. Oh, no, I've got a box on my screen instead, so it's going to be taken over by the box. Hang on, let me see if I can get rid of that box. Oh, there you go. Can you see that?
I think people get...
Look at that. Pimana thinks you get the gist. Look at it. Have you ever seen anyone as festive as that? I never have.
Oh, my God, that is amazing.
I absolutely adored it. And I thought to myself, that is probably the most festive person I've ever seen there. I think as well they were collecting for charity, I think. Good on them. But it made me think, how festive are you? Have you got anything up? Do you care about Christmas? Are you proper into it?
I am actually. I do care about Christmas. Look, I think there are three things for me. Firstly, it's
Make them very quick. Three things. I want to ask everyone their
thoughts. It's the birth of baby Jesus. I'm a Muslim, but we revere Jesus as a prophet, so very important. Great time to get together with friends and family, and also to think about those less fortunate than yourself.
Indeed. Are you guys what you like when it comes to Christmas?
Well, I loved Christmas as a child, but then parenting young children and doing stockings at midnight put me right off it. And now, with grown-up children, actually, I'm not very festive.
Are you not?
No, I'm afraid I'm not.
I love Christmas. Christmas is a time to get together with your family, wear Christmas jumpers, do Christmas crackers, Christmas dinner, Christmas tree. I love it. I think it's amazing.
Well, I love it as well. I would have my Christmas tree up all year round if I thought I could get away with it. I don't think I could though. Anyway, that is pretty much all we've got time for. If you've got any random Christmas festivities in your house or garden, send me some pictures. I'd love to see them. But for now, that is all for this show. We'll be back tomorrow. Pimana, Ben, Ali, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your company. I'll see you tomorrow 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock. Have a good evening.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, dry and cloudy for most today, and the next few days we'll see more of the same. We are going to see some thick fog patches though, thickening up overnight, particularly over parts of eastern England. The largely dry weather thanks to a chunky area of high pressure that's slowly moving in, pushing away these weather fronts to the north. They have been bringing some rain to Shetland during the day, but that's fizzling out, and as I say, most places are going to be dry. But the fog is thickening up.